I personally had to overcome so many hurdles to get to where I am today, from a place of self-loathing to a place of self-love, where I love myself more than anyone else. And, that may sound selfish to say. And, when you hear this, I love me more than anyone else, you get a twinge of like, oh my God, that sounds selfish or narcissistic or conceited. And it is that conditioning and programming that we as women in particular receive through growing up, but also even just in the general world around us. Unfortunately, society raises women to believe that self-love is selfish. And really, what I've discovered through my own life journey is nothing could be further from the truth. It, in fact, powers us up. If we are truly to become truly equal as a gender, we need to power ourselves up from within. And that is giving ourselves our own love first.
That's so beautiful and so true and so needed. Well, welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for joining this incredible episode of Flourish or Fold Stories of Resilience. We have an amazing guest with us here today, and I'm so excited for you to meet her and hear her story. Her name is Jenna Banks, and she is a keynote speaker, a social impact entrepreneur, and the author of the book entitled I Love Me More. Welcome, Jenna Banks, to our show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to have this conversation with you today.
I'm so excited too. We were just talking before we recorded about all of the incredible work that you are doing inside of your community. And I was thinking it would be great if you could tell us more about what it means to be a social impact entrepreneur, because that might be a new term for some people out there.
Yeah, it was a new term for me too. I was trying to figure out what is it that I am, and I had to look it up. I am a social impact entrepreneur. Basically, it's an entrepreneur, which I've been, on and off for much of my life. But social impact means making an impact on society, kind of like what it sounds like. Is you are making an impact through either helping others through speaking, teaching, coaching. I'm creating a platform called Powerful Women. It's going to be helping women worldwide be empowered and to power each other up through this social network. So it's really about giving back and doing good with the work that I'm doing, rather than just having a business or enterprise that makes a profit just to make a profit, or to sell products, or to provide a service. This goes beyond that, and it actually does good in the larger social impact way.
That's so amazing to hear. And it's so exciting to talk to you because you really are so focused on, empowering people, and specifically empowering women. Is there a reason that you chose to really focus in on women and women's empowerment?
Yeah, I actually really saw a great need for that. I'm a problem solver by nature. And I personally had to overcome so many hurdles to get to where I am today, from a place of self-loathing to a place of self-love, where I love myself more than anyone else. And, that may sound selfish to say. And throughout my time on this planet, and through the research and writing my book titled I Love Me More, I found that so many women think that it is selfish to love yourself. And I saw this over and over again in my everyday life and conversations, even with friends and complete strangers as well. And then also, since I launched my book, I've been on many podcasts and talked to many people. And when you hear this, I love me more than anyone else, you get a twinge of like, oh my God, that sounds selfish or narcissistic or conceited. And it is that conditioning and programming that we as women in particular receive through growing up, but also even just in the general world around us, we see these behaviors and these beliefs with other women around us, and we naturally tend to fit into the society in which we were born. And so even if we were raised not believing that, we tend to take that on just as general society is. And unfortunately, society raises women to believe that self-love is selfish. And really, what I've discovered through my own life journey is nothing could be further from the truth. It, in fact, powers us up. If we are truly to become truly equal as a gender, we need to power ourselves up from within. And that is giving ourselves our own love first.
That's so beautiful and so true and so needed. Do you have a couple practices that you have engaged with that you might want to share with us here for people that are listening, women and men, right? We could all benefit
Yeah.
from a little self-love, right?
Yes.
And of course, your work is for women in particular.
Yeah.
What are some of those practices that have really worked for you, and maybe you've outlined them in your book as well?
Oh, yeah, they're definitely in there. I'll try to hit on a few here quickly, but I'm glad that you mentioned both women and men need self-love. It's absolutely true. The only reason why I wrote the book for women is because there are particular issues that women in particular deal with more than men. But I have to tell you, I have a lot of men who also follow me on social media, and who have read the book and who say it speaks to them as well. But it definitely is particularly for women because, for example, let's take one example, which is saying I'm sorry.
Mm.
Sounds really basic and also seems like altruistic, right? Like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. It sounds like a good thing, but actually women tend to say it much more than men. And where it really gets me is, for example, I live in a building that has an elevator. And, I teach women, the power of not saying I'm sorry all the time and to really catch yourself, because it's almost like a reflex. Like, I'm sorry, but what are we so really sorry for? For example, if I'm in my elevator and I'm waiting for the people to come out so I can get in, it's women who say to me, oh, I'm sorry, when they're getting out. Why?
Mm.
Why are you sorry? Why are you sorry for existing in this elevator? Why are you sorry for getting out? You have the right to get out of this elevator, but we're not consciously aware of what I call these unconscious, disempowering social norms. They're so deeply embedded that they're unconscious to us. They're a reflex. And we don't realize how much it affects our power. So when we're constantly playing small by saying I'm sorry, it just shrinks us down. It teaches us that we're not supposed to take up space. But men on the other hand are raised differently, right? They're raised to be boys, to take up space, to proudly share your accomplishments with the world. And so another one of these disempowering social norms is that women tend to do is to play down our achievements and not even really talk about them because we don't want to seem conceited. We don't want to seem egotistical. We don't want to seem selfish or narcissistic. And what happens is we run the other way really
Mm.
hard. And we just, oh, I don't want to even talk about that. I don't want to seem egotistical. But the problem with that is we actually need to build ourselves up internally by speaking out our accomplishments. Not only does it build up our sense of personal power and makes us proud of ourselves and energizes ourselves from within. This is part of self-love as well. It also announces to the world what you've done. And, this also holds us back in the workplace. When we don't talk about our accomplishments, our higher ups don't know what we've done to contribute to our company or our team. And if they don't know, guess what? You don't get promoted. You don't get raises. You're not seen as high achieving. Yet the guys are raised and socially conditioned to, of course, naturally say, hey, I did this. Yep, I did that. And that's okay. We need to make that okay. Another one, a big one, and I talk about all of these in the book. There are so many, but another big one that I call a power drain is not holding our boundaries and not even knowing them in the first place. There's a
Mm.
big problem, especially with women in particular. We have this, what I call this nice girl conditioning, and we all want to be seen as a nice girl. It's kind of basically programmed into us when we're young girls. Oh, don't, be good girl, be the nice girl. And what does that tend to mean? Well, usually it means buck it up, buttercup. What you're feeling doesn't matter. What somebody else feels matters more. And so we go through this conditioning of making sure everyone else's perceived feelings are first taken care of by us, and that we're being seen as a nice girl. That matters more than how we truly feel.
Mhm. That, that's so powerful. And I think we hear so often phrases like, my good work should speak for itself.
Mm.
Is that a lie? Should we stop believing that, Jenna?
Yes. Yes. You can't here, I'm going to share a quick story with you.
I'm so excited.
I have a friend who, she's amazing. Like when I met her, I was like, wow, this girl is balling it. Like she lives in a high-rise condo in the city, drives the range, goes on the luxury vacations, drives Range Rover. I mean, she makes more money than a lot of men that I know. And come to find out, she shared her story about how she got there and where she came from. Just, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to share this story with anyone I meet. And I actually put this in the book because it's really powerful. She, right out of college, started at a Fortune 500 company, and she worked late nights, weekends, great worker, super hardworking and loyal. And her department was winning month after month, year after year. Her bosses were getting promoted year after year. And she sat back trying to let her good work speak for itself, hoping that one day her hard work would get noticed by the higher ups and she would get promoted and get the raises and all of that. Well, that day never came. And so one day she's like, you know what? I'm so tired of this. I am going to take some action. She marched into HR and she says, hey, you know what? I did this, I did that. My boss got promoted. I was responsible for XYZ that got our team to XYZ. And yet all these other people are getting promoted. What about me? And, HR was shocked. They were shocked. Why? Because they didn't know. Letting your hard work speak for itself does not pay off. And this is that old conditioning and programming, right? We think it should, and yet it doesn't. And so guess what happened? Once that she spoke up, and she was, by the way, fully ready to quit. And I think that is really key. As women, knowing our worth and owning our value, we have to own it. And we have to say, if you're not willing to see it, if you're not willing to value me as much as I value myself, I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to go break up with you. If it's a relationship, I'm going to break up with you, move on, and I will only be with someone who values me as much as I value myself, or walk away from the job. Whatever it is, it applies in either situation, relationship, work, whatever. You have to value yourself first and enough to walk away. Well, she was willing to walk away, but they weren't willing to let her go because now they realized, oh my gosh, we have this very valuable employee. Well, now what happened since then is she never stopped getting promoted. And she went from, very low level to high level VP at this company. And, her trajectory, she actually says to me, I kind of wish they'd stop promoting me because I would like to get comfortable in a position for a while. That is the power of not sitting back and hoping one day they recognize your worth.
That is such a powerful story to learn from and to see how things can be different when we have the courage to be able to talk about our accomplishments and to stop falling into that trap, like you said, that our good work should speak for itself.
Yeah, it's not, look, it's not selfish. It's not narcissistic. It's not egotistical. You can say it in a cocky way and that will not come off well. So it's a matter of presenting it in the right way, but also it's important to say it for yourself. I do this. I call it celebrating my small wins every day. It's really important, not just the big ones. Like if you got all your tasks done on your task list for the day, it's really important to stop, notice it, pat yourself on the back, give yourself the kudos because you feel good. Like, hey, you're proud of yourself, a sense of accomplishment. And we need to foster more of that within, because when we feel good about ourselves, we have more energy to do things like I'm doing today, being a social impact entrepreneur. I have to power myself up first before I can give to everyone else. But when you can come from a place of high energy and full power, I like to call it powerful, not the old school way of thinking of power as in power over other people. It's an internal power. It's power over yourself. It's power within. It has nothing to do with the outside world. It has to do with how you feel about yourself.
And that is super powerful indeed. So for you, Jenna, our show here, Flourish or Fold, Stories of Resilience, it's well-known people like you sharing your lesser well-known story of resilience. And I'm curious for you, Jenna, as you think about your journey to getting to this place of deep understanding and wisdom, what has been a significant challenge for you that you feel like has really been an important part of your formation as a woman and as a person?
Yeah, I talk about this in my book because I think it's important for readers to understand where I came from, which was not at all near where I am today. I had a lot of hurdles to overcome, and it wasn't just one story, it was many. I was raised in a very strict religious upbringing, almost cult-like, where I was kind of shut off from the outside world. A lot of harsh punishment, and really I was repressed as an individual. I ended up leaving home at the age of 14, confronting my father, facing this fear of being, of what would happen if I stand up for myself for the very first time and speak my mind. And it's scary. It was so scary. I just remember my heart pounding out of my chest and thinking that I was going to die. But, I wanted to see what life was like on the other side. So I confronted him and said, I don't want to be here anymore. And that was the first time I really took a stance for myself. And, I went from one home of being, an abusive home to my mother's home, which was mentally abusive. I thought I was leaving one situation to go to something better. Come to find out it was just as bad, if not worse. In fact, I think a lot of the hardcore trauma I had to deal with and overcome came from those couple of years that I stayed with her. Got kicked out at the age of 16, ended up getting my GED because I was bouncing around too much, living with friends and my grandparents for a little bit, and had to get my GED. Ended up getting pregnant, was pregnant and married at the age of 19. Then I was a divorced and single mom by the age of 22. And before all of that happened, I was very suicidal. So I know you asked for one story, but literally this was a lead up of a lot of hurdles to overcome. I was incredibly suicidal in from around 17 to 18, I would say. And the final suicide attempt led me in the hospital in a coma. I did almost die. But I got through all of that. I ended up being, I got divorced at 22. So literally it's like one thing after another. But you know what? I know your show is all about resilience. And I think all of that, I don't look at any of that and wish any of it was any different, honestly, because it shaped me into the incredibly resilient person I am today. And it taught me how to overcome those things and learn to love myself, because through all of it, I realized not only did I not love myself, I wanted to die. I was in a place of self-loathing, no sense of self-worth and no sense of self-value. So to get to a place where I am today of a person who not only knows her worth, but I love me more than anyone else, which is the title of my book, I Love Me More, How to Find Happiness and Success Through Self-Love, because I had to learn to love myself more than my child, more than my boss, more than my partner, more than my family. It had to be more than anyone else. And by loving myself more, I was able to give so much more to everybody else. And that was a huge reframe for me.
What a beautiful and harrowing story. And I think your story is so powerful because it really signifies what it means to go through so many challenges, either simultaneously or back to back, And, when I look at the incredible, powerful woman that sits here today, so often we think that we become strong and powerful by avoiding challenge, but it's really the moments of challenge that shape us and gift us, I think, with this sense of wisdom and strength. What are your thoughts on
Absolutely.
that?
I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, I like I said, I wouldn't have it any other way. If I were raised in a place of privilege and everything handed to me and no problems to deal with and no family issues and no trauma, I wouldn't have the wisdom that I have today and to help others who've been through, similar circumstances.
Hmm. That's such an incredible story.
For all of you listening in to Flourish or Fold Stories of Resilience, I want to share with you an online course that we have on our website. We're going to go ahead and drop the website in our show notes, or you can go to www.resilience-leadership.com and check out our offerings. We've got an incredible course for you called Flourish, the 5 Practices of Highly Resilient People. So if you love what you're learning about in this podcast, if you love these conversations on resilience, if you love hearing about how you can more effectively face the inevitable moments of challenge, change, and complexity, or the 3 C's as I call them, in your life, then go ahead and check out our online course, Flourish, the 5 Practices of Highly Resilient People, because what you are going to find is a one-on-one tutorial with me around each of those 5 practices, as well as an introduction and a conclusion. We've got hours of content that is going to allow you to engage in direct coaching and learning with me on the 5 practices. Go ahead and check it out, and I hope you'll join us in our online course, Flourish, the 5 Practices of Highly Resilient People.
If you distilled maybe like one lesson, right? If you sort of like put a thread through so many challenges, in addition to like loving yourself more than anyone else, is there a particular lesson or nugget of wisdom that also comes up for you there?
I do have a phrase I like to share, which is, if you don't give it weight, it doesn't matter. This is kind of interesting. I'm kind of scientific in my way of thinking. I'm very much I find patterns in things, and I like to do my research and all of that. And I love this phrase so much because if you think about it, matter, right? Matter, some solid object that's matter, has weight. And we learn in science studies in class when we were growing up that, in order for something to be matter, it has weight. Even air has weight, right? You blow into the balloon, you weigh it, the balloon weighs more with the air in it than it does without the air in it. So if, in our world, we make things matter. You can look at that two ways: matter as in solid objects, or matter as in they matter to you. What's happening in politics? What's happening in the news? What's happening with your children? What's happening with your best friend? These things have weight. They have matter in our lives. And so what it means to me is, these things that we make matter only are matter because it has the weight of our energy. If you don't want that to matter or be matter in your life anymore, what do you have to do? Pull your energy, pull your attention, pull the weight of your energy away from it. And guess what? Poof, it's no longer matter. Doesn't exist anymore. So we have the power to make things matter, to make these objects, these things in our world. And all you have to do, if you don't want it to be bothering you anymore, is shift your energy from it. Decide, I am not going to give it the energy of my thoughts, the energy of my attention, the energy of my care or concern. Because, we sit there and we can worry and we can get upset and but that we have the power to not have that matter in our world. And that's your choice. There's another powerful thing that came into my awareness. not too long ago, and it's really been resonating with me, and I'd love to share it because I think it's relevant here as well. And that is the power of choice.
Mm.
You know, that is a superpower that we have. And I don't think many of us, myself included, for many, many years, realized how powerful the power of choice is. Again, it comes down to choosing. We can choose what we make matter in our world, but that is our choice. Just like we can be reactionary to something. You can say something to me and I can choose to take it personally. I can choose to be flattered by what you say. I could choose to say, I'm just going to not give that any energy at all. It is a choice. It is a choice. So when something's coming at you, when someone's coming at you with some kind of something, and now you want to make it this big deal in your life because they said that, now I'm taking it personally, and da 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 da. Is that really what you want to make matter in your world? Or just want to go, you know what? I'm going to put that aside and go focus on my goals. I'm going to put that aside and go make myself happy right now.
I think that is just it's so life-changing because it's really easy not to recognize that we have that choice.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like, I don't know, like looking under the bed and being like, wait a second, this was like hiding under here all along. You know, it's something that like people don't tell us. And
Yeah.
it's not until we have someone like you to share with us that we really do have a choice in this moment. It's like, wait a second, I do. But it's so easy until you illuminate that.
Yeah. So I'll give you one more story, and that I think might help this even resonate even more. It was a really powerful story I came across that is kind of life-changing. So there was this experiment done back in like the 1960s, I want to say. A couple of researchers, they were researching with these German shepherds, and they had 3 different groups of German shepherds. One group, they put in a harness and they administered regularly a shock to them. Wasn't harming them, but it was, they definitely felt it and they didn't like it. But they didn't give them a choice in the matter. They administered the shock. And then there was another group that they put in a harness as well. And they administered the same shock. However, with this group, they had a lever that the dogs figured out if they pressed the lever, the shock would stop. And so those dogs quickly learned to press the lever and make that shock stop. The third set of dogs were put in a harness, but they weren't shocked at all. And then they decided to put a box together and put each dog from each experiment into the box separately. And they put in this box a low divider in the center that would shock you if you came against the divider. Both the set of dogs that were shocked and had a lever to press to stop the shock, as well as those that received no shock at all, quickly learned to step over that little divider. However, the dogs that were shocked without a choice in the matter, they never stepped over the side of the box to get to the other side that didn't shock them. They stayed on the side that shocked them. They didn't know they had a choice. They didn't realize it. And this is what they realized, these researchers, that these dogs learned helplessness. They called it learned helplessness. And they realized over time, psychologists realized that this also is present in humans. We learn helplessness. We forget that we have a choice. And it could be through this conditioning that I talk about, like the nice girl conditioning, letting our boundaries get crossed. We learn to suppress that shock of somebody crossing a boundary, like, oh, that doesn't feel good. Mommy, I don't want to go to that dinner. I don't like that person. Stop it and be a nice girl. Get over yourself. Buck it up, buttercup. That conditioning teaches us to get used to that shock. And at some point, it just becomes this dull kind of a feeling. We don't realize, there's that dull, whatever, you're so used to it. You don't realize you have a choice. You can choose something else. You can choose something better. there's another option, and we forget about these choices that we have in our lives. It's a learned helplessness, if you will. But and then also understanding the power of choice is our superpower. It really is part of what makes us human. It's something special that we have as humans. And if you believe in God, God gave us the choice, gave us the power of choice. It is a major superpower that we forget. And so remembering the superpower of ours is absolutely life-changing.
What an incredible story. And I love how you tie that to then our conditioning as something that can shock us or can teach us that sense of learned helplessness. That's really amazing.
Not a powerful story. I was like, oh
It's
my gosh.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing. And one of the things that we talk about, Jenna, is the 5 practices of highly resilient people, and how we can use these practices not only to address challenge, change, and complexity more effectively, but to recognize that when these inevitable moments show up in our lives, just like you said, we have a choice about how we respond. And I know you're familiar with this framework and this model. And I was curious for you if one of these sort of practices stand out for you in terms of how you've been most effective in navigating that sense of choice and facing challenge.
Yes. Well, on your list, the possibilities, for example, possibilities are huge for me. Like just knowing that there are unlimited possibilities. That is something that since I was a little kid, believe it or not, it was just a phrase that stood out for me. It's the possibilities. Like that really can drive you forward through anything, really, is just focusing on the possibilities that we have. And that's why I love being an entrepreneur as well, because there are unlimited possibilities for what you can do. Truly, again, it goes back to creating this world however we want to create it. We truly do have the power through choice to create our world however we want it. There are unlimited possibilities to choose from. For example, someone could pay you a compliment and you could choose to be flattered, or you could choose to say, I'm not going to be flattered. It is a choice. We can be reactionary to that. And, I'm flattered, because that's how we've been conditioned to behave, right? But you can still choose not to be flattered. It is a choice. And we have to bring these unconscious behaviors to the forefront of our consciousness and consciously choose what we want for our lives based on what's going to best serve us. We have this one life to live. Why not live it to our fullest potential, right?
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Well, I know there's a lot of people who are thinking to themselves right now, okay, I want to get this book because I need to love me more, right? And I know you're doing incredible work online and you've got this amazing Instagram page. So talk to our listeners, Jenna. How can people learn more about the work that you're doing and get involved with you as a teacher and interface with your incredible wisdom and lessons?
Oh, thank you so much for that. And thank you for asking. I guess right now the best way is at my website, jenna-banks.com, because there I have links to everything. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. I tend to share these little nuggets throughout the week just to try and help even those who've read my book, just reinforce some of what they've learned and share new insights. So the website, jenna-banks.com, is definitely the best place to start. My Instagram handle is at jennabanks.0, and it's the same on Facebook and the same on TikTok. And if you're into LinkedIn, I love LinkedIn. I have a business perspective on all of this, and I include a chapter on business and self-love in the workplace in my book as well. So on LinkedIn, if you just type in Jenna Banks, that should be pretty easy to come up. But, I am starting a new platform called Powerful Women, and that's Powerful, Full, women.com. And there you will have access to this network that I'm putting together right now. And I'm really excited to launch that. So I do speaking on this power container concept and being a powerful woman. And this network will kind of reinforce all those concepts and allow you to also network with other women where you can share, the lessons you're learning and stories in your own life and how you've overcome. And, like that story I shared with my friend who worked at the Fortune 500, it's a place where we can share those types of stories and learn from each other and become more powerful together. Because truly, yes, it's one thing to power yourself from within, but as women, we also need to support one another, because also we've been socially conditioned to not support one another as much. We've got this bro club, I like to call the guys club, where they meet each other and they're instantly like, hey bro, what's up, brother? Like, they've got that. But why don't we do that as women? All right. Why don't we say, hey, sister, what's happening? How can I support you? Instead, we tend to be raised to, look at women and judge what they're wearing and, and not be as supportive and not see each other as our sisters. So I want to create a safe place where we can all just be supportive of one another and have each other's back and see each other as sisters. So powerfulwomen.com will be a place where you can also be a part of that.
I think that's so wonderful and so needed. I just have this feeling sometimes that as women, sometimes we're our own worst enemies, because just as you said, men tend to build each other up. And as women, I think early on, when there was only room for one around the table, it engendered competition. And now that's not the case. So we get to catch up to the times.
Yes.
And, create that cult of sisterhood and support that is, really been lacking and is so needed. I love that you touched on that.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for letting me share that.
Amazing. Well, Jenna, you are doing such incredible work in the world, and gosh darn it, if there's one thing that we need more of, it's more love in this world. And it's certainly more self-love.
Yeah.
And I love how you really, decouple this notion of being like selfish or narcissistic with this idea of like, no, this is pure and this is foundational for what we all need to do. It doesn't need to be guilt-ridden. It's a focus, and it's something that we get to step into as part of our humanity, which is just so beautiful.
And it's much needed, definitely much needed in this world.
Amazing. Well, Jenna, thank you so much for being a guest on Flourish or Fold. Your interview is absolutely incredible. I know that your words and your wisdom and your perspective is going to touch the lives of so many and uplift just an incredible number of people. So thank you for being a part of the work that we're doing, for generously sharing your story. And I think it's very, very clear that you are just flourishing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. Thanks for this conversation and for sharing this message with your audience.
What a joy to have you. Well, until next time, Jenna Banks, author of I Love Me More. Such a great concept. And Jenna, thank you for being here. And I'm so excited for your Powerful Woman platform.
Thank you so much.
Well, that was Jenna Banks, ladies and gentlemen, with her beautiful book, I Love Me More. And Jenna's message is so timely at this moment, because I think it's so easy for us to feel angry, frustrated, disappointed, disenfranchised with ourselves, with the world. Maybe we're not where we want to be. Maybe things aren't going the way that we think they should, or they're not changing or moving at a pace that we desire. And it's so easy to get angry and feel like we're falling behind and there's something wrong with us. And for me, one of the elements of Jenna's message that is so powerful is reminding us that self-love isn't just nice to have. It's a critical element of how we can enhance ourselves as humans. And I think in this moment, in this day and age when life feels really hard, being reminded to love ourselves more, and that's a critical first step, not only to expanding and amplifying who we are, but the more we love ourselves, the more we get to also share love for others. I like to say that our love for others is limited only by how much we can love ourselves. Until next time, this is Dr. Taryn Marie with Flourish or Fold, Stories of Resilience. Please do share our podcast with all of the people that are near and dear to your heart. We so appreciate you getting this message out and getting to share our work with others. Thank you so, so much. Sending you lots of love and gratitude. Bye for now.
For all of you listening in to Flourish or Fold Stories of Resilience, I want to share with you an online course that we have on our website. We're going to go ahead and drop the website in our show notes, or you can go to www.resilience-leadership.com and check out our offerings. We've got an incredible course for you called Flourish, the 5 Practices of Highly Resilient People. So if you love what you're learning about in this podcast, if you love these conversations on resilience, if you love hearing about how you can more effectively face the inevitable moments of challenge, change, and complexity, or the 3 C's as I call them, in your life, then go ahead and check out our online course, Flourish, the 5 Practices of Highly Resilient People, because what you are going to find is a one-on-one tutorial with me around each of those 5 practices, as well as an introduction and a conclusion. We've got hours of content that is going to allow you to engage in direct coaching and learning with me on the 5 practices. Go ahead and check it out, and I hope you'll join us in our online course, Flourish, the 5 Practices of Highly Resilient People.